The electric blue arc of energy zipped between Oliver Finch's fingertips and the ancient alien scepter, making his entire arm tingle like he'd licked a battery. The sensation crawled up his shoulder, down his spine, and settled somewhere behind his sternum with a warm, persistent hum. Not exactly the outcome he'd expected when he'd agreed to stay late and dust the new exhibit. Oliver yanked his hand back, eyes wide behind his thick-framed glasses. "That's not supposed to happen." His voice echoed through the empty grand hall of extraterrestrial artifacts, bouncing off the polished marble floors and glass display cases filled with treasures from across the galaxy. The Royal Scepter of Caldoria, or the Cosmic Stick, as Oliver had privately nicknamed it, sat innocently on its display stand, looking exactly as it had for the 3 months since its arrival at the Earth Universal Heritage Museum. Golden shaft, ornate carvings in an alien script, and that strange claw-like head with what looked like sapphires embedded along its prongs. Except now, faint whispers of blue energy still crackled along its surface. Okay, that definitely wasn't in the orientation packet. Oliver nervously adjusted his glasses and smoothed down his favorite Exeter t-shirt featuring a pixelated red robot, a rare find from a vintage gaming convention that had cost him 2 months' salary. The shirt was entirely inappropriate for museum work, but he'd thrown his gray hoodie over it when he got the late-night call to come in. His supervisor would never know. Oliver glanced at the security cameras in the corners of the room. They'd been on the fritz all day, which was why he'd been called in to babysit the priceless artifacts in the first place. Still, best not to take chances. He pulled his phone from his pocket and snapped a quick picture of the now dormant scepter. "Just a static discharge," he muttered unconvincingly. "Probably." The truth was that Oliver Finch knew exactly what the Royal Scepter of Caldoria was supposed to do, or rather, what it wasn't supposed to do. In the 642 years since its discovery in the ruins of the ancient Caldorian palace, the scepter had never reacted to anyone or anything. Not to the Zenithian scholars who first documented it. Not to the Quasar collective scientists who spent decades studying it. Not to the 15 different species of diplomats who had tried to claim it as their heritage. Not even to the brilliant Arcturan energy specialists who swore they could unlock its secrets. The scepter, according to every textbook, research paper, and museum placard in the galaxy, was beautiful, mysterious, and completely, utterly inert. And it had just lit up like a Christmas tree at Oliver's touch. He shook his head, pushing his unruly brown hair back from his forehead. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Not to him. Not to Oliver Finch, the 28-year-old academic failure who had bombed out of the Xenoarchaeology advanced degree program at Earth Universal 3 years ago and now dusted artifacts for minimum wage. The scepter pulsed once, as if contradicting him. "I must be hallucinating. Too much caffeine." Oliver had downed 4 cups of coffee to stay alert for his unexpected night shift. His hands were already shaky from the excess caffeine, which would explain why they were trembling now. It wouldn't, however, explain the faint blue glow that was once again emanating from the scepter. Curiosity overrode caution. Oliver had spent years studying artifacts like this one, even if he'd never finished his degree. He leaned closer, noticing how the alien script along the shaft seemed to shift and change, almost like it was trying to rearrange itself into something he could understand. "That's new," he whispered. His hand moved of its own accord, reaching out again. The rational part of his brain screamed that touching strange, glowing alien objects was exactly how people in movies got vaporized or possessed, or worse. But there was something calling to him, a gentle tug, like a half-forgotten melody. His fingertips brushed the golden surface. The world exploded in blue. Dr. Astrid Kirsch was not having a good morning. First, her hover car had malfunctioned, forcing her to take public transit to the museum. Then she discovered that someone had moved her carefully organized research notes on the Caldorian exhibit. And now, standing in the grand hall, she was staring at the impossible. I'm sorry. Did you say it responded to you? Her crisp accent sharpened with disbelief as she stared at the disheveled young man fidgeting before her. She vaguely recognized him, one of the maintenance staff, though why he was wearing that ridiculous t-shirt with his uniform was beyond her understanding of Earth Universal's dress code. Yes, Dr. Kirsch, I know how it sounds, but... It sounds, she interrupted, like an impossibility. The royal scepter has been studied by the finest minds across 17 galaxies for over 6 centuries. It has never, not once, displayed any signs of energy output or response. I know the history, Oliver said, then quickly added, ma'am, when her eyebrows shot up. I was in the Xenoarch program here for 3 years. Astrid's eyes narrowed as she reassessed him. Finch, Oliver Finch, I remember now. You wrote that controversial paper suggesting the Kaldorian extinction wasn't caused by a supernova, but by their own technology. Oliver winced. That paper had been the beginning of the end for his academic career. That's me. Your theories were unsubstantiated and your methodology was flawed, she said bluntly. But you were creative. Coming from Dr. Kirsch, who had published 68 peer-reviewed papers on alien technological artifacts, that was almost a compliment. Look, I know what I saw. Oliver pointed to the scepter, which sat innocently in its display case, showing no signs of the light show from the previous night. It responded to me, specifically to me. I tried again later with Wilson from security present, and nothing happened. So your claim is that an artifact that has ignored emperors, scientists, and the greatest minds in the galaxy has chosen to respond to you. Her tone made it clear how unlikely she found this scenario. Oliver's shoulders slumped. Put like that, it did sound ridiculous. He was nobody. A college dropout with mountains of student debt and a studio apartment so small he had to fold his bed into the wall to have room to turn around. The only remarkable thing about him was his collection of rare retro video games, and he doubted an ancient alien scepter cared about his perfect score on Cosmic Invaders. I know what I saw, he repeated quietly. Dr. Kirsch sighed. The security cameras were malfunctioning last night. Conveniently enough, there's no evidence of your claim. The scepter shows no signs of energy readings now. And frankly, Mr. Finch, your academic history doesn't lend credibility to your observations. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but please leave the analysis of priceless artifacts to the professionals. She turned away dismissively. And please wear appropriate attire for your position in the future. Oliver stood there, embarrassment and frustration burning in his chest. He glanced at the scepter, silently willing it to light up again to vindicate him. It remained stubbornly dark. As Astrid walked away, her assistant Hayden hurried to her side, tablet in hand. Dr. Kirsch, we've got representatives from the Galactic Heritage Foundation arriving in 20 minutes to discuss the exhibition. Prepare the conference room and make sure all the research materials are properly organized this time, she replied, not sparing another glance for Oliver. Hayden, however, gave Oliver a curious look before following his boss. Something about that look suggested he wasn't as dismissive of Oliver's claims as Dr. Kirsch had been. Oliver sighed and turned to leave. He had bathrooms to clean and display cases to dust. His brief moment of being something special, of being chosen, was over, leaving him with nothing but the certainty that he was losing his mind. Behind him, unnoticed, a faint blue pulse flickered within the depths of the scepter, then faded away. I'm not crazy, Priya. Priya Patel didn't look up from her circuit board, her skilled fingers manipulating tiny components with practiced precision. The museum's technology lab was her domain, and she preferred machines to most people. Never said you were, Ollie. But you don't believe me either. Oliver slouched against her workbench, careful not to disturb any of her organized chaos. I believe that you believe you saw something. Priya finally looked up, her dark eyes magnified behind specialized work goggles. But the scepter's been studied for centuries. If it was going to wake up and say hello, why would it pick a random Tuesday and a museum technician? Thanks for the vote of confidence. Oliver reached over and snagged one of her sugar cookies. Priya always had treats in her lab, claiming that her brain ran on glucose. You know what I mean, it's statistically unlikely. She pushed her goggles up to her forehead. Plus, there's the whole pics or it didn't happen rule. I tried taking a picture. My phone glitched out right when I pressed the button. It's just a blur. Priya perked up. Your phone glitched, let me see. Oliver handed it over, watching as she examined the blurred image with sudden interest. This isn't a camera glitch, she said finally. This looks like an electromagnetic interference pattern, like your phone's image sensor got overwhelmed by a massive energy surge. So you believe me? Hope crept into Oliver's voice. I believe something weird happened to your phone. She handed it back. But that doesn't mean the ancient alien stick is talking to you and only you. The lab door hissed open, and they both looked up to see Hayden Williams, Dr. Kirsch's assistant, standing awkwardly in the doorway. His perfectly pressed uniform and slick-back blonde hair made him look like he'd stepped out of a corporate advertisement. Sorry to interrupt, he said, his naturally soft voice making him sound perpetually apologetic. Mr. Finch, do you have a moment? Oliver and Priya exchanged puzzled looks. Hayden Williams, Dr. Kirsch's right-hand man, had never sought Oliver out before. Sure, Oliver said cautiously. In private, if you don't mind. Hayden's eyes darted nervously to Priya. Anything you can say to Ollie, you can say to me, Priya stated flatly. We don't have secrets. Hayden hesitated, then stepped fully into the lab, allowing the door to close behind him. It's about what you saw with the scepter. Oliver straightened up. What about it? I believe you. Hayden's words hung in the air, and we need to talk quickly before they arrive. Before who arrives? Priya asked. The Arcturans. Hayden's normally composed face showed genuine concern. They've chartered an emergency flight to Earth. They'll be here tomorrow. Oliver frowned. Why would the Arcturans drop everything and rush here? Hayden took a deep breath. Because after you left this morning, I ran a deep spectrum analysis of the scepter. I found residual energy patterns that match exactly what the ancient Kaldorian texts describe as the awakening signature of the royal scepter. So it did respond to me, Oliver exclaimed. Yes, and that's problematic. Hayden lowered his voice. The scepter is more than a royal ornament. According to the texts, it's a key to something the Kaldorians hid before their civilization collapsed, something powerful enough that legends of it have persisted for millennia. What kind of something? Priya asked, her scientific curiosity piqued. No one knows exactly. The texts are fragmentary, but the Arcturans have spent centuries trying to activate the scepter. They've invested billions in the research. Hayden's eyes locked onto Oliver's. And now it's chosen you, a human. The political implications alone are staggering. But I'm nobody, Oliver protested. Not anymore, Hayden said grimly. Not to them. The weight of Hayden's words sank in, and Oliver felt a cold knot of dread form in his stomach. His entire life he dreamed of making a significant archaeological discovery, of being recognized in his field. Now that something extraordinary had actually happened to him, all he felt was fear. What do they want with me? He asked quietly. Best case scenario, they'll want to study you to figure out why the scepter responded. Hayden's expression suggested the worst case scenarios weren't worth voicing. And Dr. Kirsch, does she know about your analysis? Hayden shook his head. She's too by the book. She'd report it immediately, and you'd be in an Arcturan research facility before you could blink. So what do we do? Oliver asked. We need to figure out why the scepter chose you and fast. Hayden looked at Priya. I need your help too. Your technical expertise could be crucial. Priya crossed her arms. And why exactly should we trust you, Mr. Perfect Assistant? A sad smile crossed Hayden's face. Because I was there when the Arcturans studied the last person who claimed a connection to a Kaldorian artifact. The air quotes around studied spoke volumes. He was my brother. The lab fell silent as Oliver and Priya processed this revelation. I'll help, Oliver said finally, but I need to understand what's happening to me. We all do, Hayden agreed. Meet me at the museum service entrance at midnight. We'll have a few hours with the scepter before anyone notices. As he turned to leave, Priya called after him. What happened to your brother? Hayden paused at the door. He was never the same again. With that ominous statement, he was gone. Priya turned to Oliver. All traces of skepticism vanished from her expression. Ollie, what have you gotten yourself into? Oliver stared at his hand, remembering the strange connection he'd felt with the scepter. I don't know, but I think I'm about to find out. Midnight at the Earth Universal Heritage Museum was eerie in a way the daytime never captured. Emergency lights cast long shadows through the exhibition halls, and the alien artifacts seemed to watch Oliver as he followed Hayden through the silent corridors. Priya trailed behind them, pushing a cart loaded with scanning equipment she had smuggled out of her lab. The security system loops every 3 minutes, Hayden explained in a hushed voice. I've synchronized our movements to the blind spots. As long as we follow my exact timing, we'll be invisible. Unless someone shows up in person, Priya pointed out. Night security is minimal. 2 guards stationed at opposite ends of the museum. They do rounds every hour on the hour. We have 43 minutes until the next one. Oliver was impressed. You've really thought this through. I've had years to plan, Hayden replied simply. They reached the grand hall where the Kaldorian exhibition dominated the space. The royal scepter gleamed under a single spotlight, its golden surface reflecting the light in hypnotic patterns. Ready? Hayden asked, pausing at the entrance. Oliver nodded, though his heart was pounding so hard he was sure the others could hear it. What do I do? Just approach it naturally. Do whatever you did before. Priya will monitor the energy readings and I'll document everything. Taking a deep breath, Oliver stepped into the hall. The moment he crossed the threshold, he felt it, a gentle tug in his chest, like the scepter was calling to him. He'd written it off as imagination before, but now, knowing what to look for, the sensation was unmistakable. It knows I'm here, he whispered. Hayden and Priya exchanged looks. The instruments aren't picking up anything yet, Priya said, checking her equipment. Keep going, Hayden encouraged. Oliver approached the display case slowly. With each step, the pulling sensation grew stronger, more insistent. By the time he stood before the case, it was all he could do not to press himself against the glass. It wants me to touch it again, he said, his voice sounding distant to his own ears. The case is alarmed, Hayden warned. Not anymore, Priya replied, tapping at a small device she had attached to the security panel. We've got 3 minutes before the system notices the bypass. Hayden carefully unlocked the case with a security key he obviously wasn't supposed to have. The glass panel slid open soundlessly. The scepter lay there, inches from Oliver's hands. Up close, the craftsmanship was even more extraordinary, the alien script flowing like liquid gold, the sapphire-like stones catching the light in impossible ways. Now that he knew to look for it, Oliver could see a faint blue shimmer dancing just below the surface. Go ahead, Hayden said tensely, but be careful. Oliver reached out slowly, his fingertips hovering just above the golden shaft. The pull was almost painful now, like a hook behind his navel. He took one last breath and made contact. Blue light erupted from the scepter, engulfing his hand, then his arm, then his entire body. Unlike before, it didn't stop. It intensified, building into a corona of electric blue energy that surrounded him completely. Oliver felt no pain, only a strange sensation of falling forward while standing perfectly still. Incredible, Priya breathed, her instruments going wild. The energy readings are off the charts. Ali, Hayden called, concern evident in his voice. Are you all right? Oliver couldn't answer. Images were flooding his mind, stars and planets he'd never seen, beings with forms he couldn't comprehend. And throughout it all, a persistent sense of urgency, a warning, a plea. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the light vanished. The scepter went dark. Oliver staggered backward, would have fallen if Hayden hadn't caught him. What happened? Hayden demanded. What did you see? Oliver blinked, trying to organize the chaos in his mind. They're coming, he whispered. They've always been coming and we're not ready. Who's coming? Priya asked, scanning him with her instruments. Before Oliver could answer, alarms blared throughout the museum, red emergency lights flooding the hall. That's not the case alarm, Hayden said, suddenly alert. That's a security breach. Something else is happening. The main doors to the grand hall burst open. 4 figures strode in, tall, thin beings with iridescent skin that shifted colors with their movements. Their elongated heads housed enormous pupilless eyes that took in the scene with cold calculation. Arcturans, Hayden hissed. They shouldn't be here until tomorrow. The tallest Arcturan stepped forward, its mouth not moving even as words filled the humans' minds. The scepter has awakened. We have come for it, and for the catalyst. Its gaze fixed on Oliver, who was still clutching the scepter, unable to let go despite his best efforts. How did they know? Priya whispered frantically. They must have been monitoring it remotely, Hayden replied. We've walked right into a trap. Return the royal artifact of Caldoria to us immediately, the Arcturan commanded, and surrender yourself for examination, human. Resistance is inadvisable. Oliver felt something change within the scepter, a shift from passive to active, from observer to protector. The blue glow returned, spreading up his arm and across his chest, forming what looked like luminous armor. I don't think it wants to go with you, Oliver said, surprised by the confidence in his voice. The lead Arcturan's skin flushed a dangerous crimson. The scepter is not sentient. It is a tool, a key, one that belongs to more capable hands than yours. Then why did it choose me? Oliver challenged, the words coming from somewhere beyond his conscious mind. The Arcturan made a sharp gesture, and 2 of its companions moved forward, devices in their long-fingered hands. The why is precisely what we intend to determine, it replied coldly. Restrain him. But before the Arcturans could reach Oliver, the blue energy surrounding him pulsed outward in a concussive wave, knocking the aliens back. The scepter was growing warmer in his hand, its light brighter. Ali, Priya called out, your nose is bleeding. He reached up with his free hand, feeling the warm trickle of blood. Whatever the scepter was doing, his body wasn't designed to channel its power indefinitely. We need to leave, Hayden said urgently. Now. The lead Arcturan had recovered and was advancing again. You cannot escape. The museum is surrounded. The scepter belongs to us by right of prior claim. No, Oliver said, the word resonating with power that wasn't his own. It belongs to itself and it's chosen its path. With a final brilliant flash of blue, the energy collapsed back into the scepter and then into Oliver himself. The light vanished. The scepter went completely dark, its golden surface turning dull and gray, like all the life had been drained from it. The Arcturans froze, their skins cycling through colors of alarm and confusion. What have you done? Their leader demanded. Oliver looked down at the now lifeless scepter, understanding flooding through him. It wasn't a key, he said softly. It was a vessel, and now it's empty. Empty? The Arcturan's mental voice quavered with something like fear. Empty of what? Oliver met its enormous eyes steadily. Knowledge, history, warnings, everything the Caldorians wanted to preserve before the end. He tapped his temple. It's all in here now. The Arcturan's skin settled on a deep midnight blue, a color of rage. Seize him. But at that moment, the museum's main security force burst into the hall, led by a stern-faced woman in a Galactic Security Administration uniform. This is Director Wallace of the GSA. Everyone, stand down immediately. The Arcturans, outnumbered and outgunned, had no choice but to comply. Director Wallace surveyed the scene. The dull, lifeless scepter, the furious Arcturans, and Oliver standing at the center of it, all with dried blood on his face, and a newfound confidence in his stance. Someone, she said icily, had better start explaining. 72 hours later, Oliver sat in a comfortable but undeniably secure room in the Galactic Security Administration's Earth headquarters. He'd been debriefed, scanned, questioned, and tested in ways he hadn't known were possible. Through it all, Priya and Hayden had stood by him, corroborating his story and providing their expertise. The door slid open, and Director Wallace entered, followed by Dr. Kirsch, whose usual composure was noticeably frayed. "Mr. Finch," the director began without preamble, "our tests confirm your account. The scepter has transferred an enormous database of Kaldorian knowledge into your brain, knowledge that, according to our preliminary analysis of what you've shared, includes warnings about an ancient enemy that may still pose a threat to our galaxy." "The Void Harbingers," Oliver supplied. "That's what the Kaldorians called them." "Yes," Director Wallace's expression was grave. "We are taking these warnings very seriously." Dr. Kirsch stepped forward, looking both impressed and irritated. "It seems your controversial theory about the Kaldorians' extinction may have been correct, Mr. Finch. They weren't destroyed by a supernova. They sacrificed themselves to seal a breach between dimensions that the Harbingers had created. And they knew the breach wouldn't hold forever," Oliver added. "That's why they created the scepter, to warn whoever came after them." "But why did it choose you?" Dr. Kirsch asked the question that had been plaguing everyone. Oliver had pondered this himself during the long hours of testing. "I think it was looking for someone who would actually listen. The Arcturans wanted to use it as a weapon. Others saw it as a path to power or prestige. I just appreciated it for what it was, an artifact with a story to tell." Director Wallace nodded thoughtfully. "The Arcturans have been officially censured for their actions, though they continue to demand access to you. We've denied their requests." "What happens now?" Oliver asked. "Now, Mr. Finch, we need your help. The information in your head could be vital to preparing our defenses against these Void Harbingers, if they are indeed still a threat." She handed him a data tablet. "We'd like to offer you a position with the GSA as a special consultant on Kaldorian matters." Oliver stared at the tablet, which displayed a job offer with a salary that made his eyes widen. I don't know what to say." "Say yes, you idiot." Priya's voice came from the doorway where she and Hayden were waiting. "There's a place for all three of you," Director Wallace clarified. "Your friend's loyalty and expertise have proven valuable." Oliver looked at Hayden, remembering his brother. "And no more secret research on people with connections to artifacts." The director's face hardened. "Those responsible for past abuses have been removed from their positions. Under my administration, we will do better." Oliver took a deep breath and accepted the tablet. "Then yes, I'll help however I can." "Excellent," Director Wallace stood. "Report to orientation at 900 tomorrow. Welcome to the GSA, Mr. Finch." As she left, Dr. Kirsch lingered behind. "I owe you an apology, Oliver. I dismissed your observations based on preconceptions. That was unscientific of me." Coming from her, it was a monumental admission. "Thank you, Dr. Kirsch." She nodded stiffly. "I look forward to working with you on the Kaldorian research team." With that, she followed the director out. Priya bounced into the room, grinning. "Special consultants to the GSA. Not bad for a couple of museum staffers, huh?" "And a research assistant," Hayden added, looking more relaxed than Oliver had ever seen him. Though I suspect we'll all have new titles soon enough. Speaking of which, Priya said, grabbing Oliver's arm, let's go shopping for your new professional wardrobe. As much as I love the vintage gaming tees, I think the fate of the galaxy calls for something a bit more impressive. Oliver laughed, but his mind was already drifting to the vast repository of knowledge now residing in his brain. Images of stars, technologies, and warnings about what lurked beyond the boundaries of known space. We've got work to do, he said softly. Important work. Hayden placed a hand on his shoulder, and we'll do it together. Priya linked her arm through Oliver's. The nerd, the tech wizard, and the reformed bureaucrat saving the galaxy sounds like the start of a bad joke. Or a good story, Oliver replied. As they left the room together, Oliver couldn't help but think back to that night in the museum when a supposedly dormant alien artifact had chosen him. Not for his brilliance or his credentials, but for his genuine appreciation of its history. The universe, it seemed, valued storytellers as much as it did warriors and scientists. And Oliver Finch, former failure, now had the most important story of all to tell.